Once upon a time, in an age of heroes, there was a king named Odysseus. And Odysseus was clever. He was so clever that when the neighboring Trojans chopped down a sacred tree, he devised a plan, built a giant wooden horse, and put some of his men inside. Then he pretended his fleet had sailed away, leaving the Trojans to find the horse at their city gates. Thinking it was a gift from the gods, they brought the horse inside, and that's where Odysseus and his men hid until the cover of darkness fell. Then they opened the gates for the rest of the Greek army, and the Trojans were defeated. And so the war was won. But as the Greeks prepared to sail back home, a terrible storm arose. A storm conjured by the god Poseidon, who was so angry at the Trojans for desecrating his sacred tree that he swore to make every Greek suffer before they reached their homeland. And so it was that when Odysseus finally landed, it wasn't the hero's welcome he had dreamed of. In fact, no one even recognized him. His wife Penelope had just gotten over her grief at his presumed death. And though she never stopped hoping he would return, she had long ago resigned herself to the fact that her husband was lost to the sea forever. As for their son, Telemachus, he was but a tiny babe when Odysseus went off to war. And now he was a young man preparing to set out on his own journey to find his father. Neither Penelope nor Telemachus knew that Odysseus was standing right outside the palace, disguised by magic as a beggar, watching his son and wondering if he should reveal himself. But before he could decide, a group of raggedy beggars approached, led by a one-eyed giant named Polyphemus. They were all, as it happened, old friends of Odysseus, though he had no memory of them after all these years. Now, Polyphemus demanded food and wine, and when Odysseus refused, the one-eyed giant grabbed him by the leg and pulled him toward a cave. Terrified, Odysseus struggled to free himself, but Polyphemus only laughed and said, "Nowhere now, my friend, for you shall be my supper tonight." Well, that was hardly the way Odysseus wanted to be remembered after his great victory in the Trojan War. So as the other beggars feasted nearby, he began to scheme. Soon he found a sharp rock, and with all his might, he poked it into Polyphemus's one eye. The giant roared in pain and stumbled about, and Odysseus kept poking until the monster collapsed. Then, seizing a burning torch, Odysseus roasted some goat meat and hung it from the ceiling. When Polyphemus woke up and reached for it, he only managed to grab a handful of ashes. Then Odysseus revealed his true identity and taunted the giant, saying, "You may have bested me once, O Polyphemus, but you will never catch me alive again." Well, enraged, Polyphemus rumbled, "Then don't expect to reach your home again, Odysseus, or if you do, it will be at great cost." With that, the giant bellowed and shook the earth, sending tremors through Odysseus's ship and tossing it about like a leaf in the wind. And so it was that Odysseus and his crew were forced to flee, and they fled for many days, until finally they landed on a beautiful island where the people welcomed them with open arms. Odysseus spent several blissful years there, but then Poseidon stirred up a new storm and sent him adrift across the sea. And this is how it went. One day, he encountered a six-headed monster named Scylla and a whirlpool called Charybdis. Now, Scylla snatched up two of his men, but Odysseus managed to escape both her and the whirlpool and land on yet another island. This time, it was an island full of delicious food and beautiful nymphs, and there he feasted for a whole month. But soon the nymphs grew tiresome, and the god Hermes arrived to tell him he had one more trial to face. The god pointed toward the horizon and said, "There lies your final challenge, the sirens. If you resist their call, you will reach home safely. But if you succumb, you will never see Ithaca again." Well, as Odysseus drew near, he heard the sirens singing, and it was the most beautiful music he had ever heard. It beckoned him closer, and though his mind knew he should flee, his body couldn't help but move toward the sound. Fortunately, his crew was prepared, having tied him to the mast with orders not to be untied until he had passed the sirens. And so it was that Odysseus survived the ordeal and sailed on for 10 more days until at last he saw the blessed shores of home. He crept ashore unnoticed, slipped inside the palace, changed back into his old clothes, and approached the fire where Penelope and Telemachus sat. "Mother," he said softly, "son, I am your husband and father." Penelope and Telemachus stared in disbelief. Could it really be? After all these years? The three embraced and wept together, overjoyed to be reunited. But suddenly, a great noise echoed through the hall, and armed guards stood between Odysseus and his family. It was a test, one last test from the gods. Would Odysseus, the clever king of Ithaca, show mercy to those who had shown him none? Would he forgive and rule again? Well, let's just say it's a good thing he was clever, because that's how the story ends. The end.